Hi everyone, my name is Genesis and I'm a member of SCDAI. SCDAI is the Student Center for Diversity, Advocacy and Inclusion. We are a student organization maintained by students for students, and our aim is to help foster a more inclusive environment in higher education. Now, in last time's video, we talked about inclusion. And in this video, we mentioned that diversity without inclusion is tokenism. So for today, we would like to explore the difference between the two and hopefully understand how you as an individual or an organization can aim to be more diverse rather than tokenistic. Let's get to it. All right, what is diversity? Diversity is often mixed up with variety because you have a lot of variety in nationalities, genders, races, sexual orientations, etc. That doesn't have to necessarily mean that you have a lot of diversity present in your group or organization. What discerns or what makes a difference between whether this variety is discriminatory, tokenistic, or actually diverse is inclusion. All right. Discrimination implies that there is always a norm and that there are others that vary from that norm. For instance, it suggests that heterosexuality is the norm and that every other sexual orientation is a variation from that norm. A variation from the norm is the standard way in which we define differences, not because it is, but because we have attached variables that qualify one as superior and others as inferior. Again, not because it is the way that it's supposed to be, but because we, as a society, have gradually started defining it as such. And this is something that we need to unlearn. A big example of discriminatory approach towards variety is seen in the Dutch higher educational system, where it is often referred to people who attend institutions for those more theoretically inclined as highly educated, and those who attend institutions for those more practically inclined as lowly educated. There is a clear acknowledgement that there is a difference in our academic inclinations, namely that some of us are more practical and others are more theoretical, which is why there are different academic institutions for the different needs. Yet, we have attached variables of superiority to the one and variables of inferiority to the other. Now, in our current social climate, the desire to be woke, the surge in social activism, political correctness, cancel culture, the power of social media, and all of it, we demand of individuals and institutions to do something about the way that we qualify differences, the way that we discriminate different groups. Meaning that individuals and institutions are left with two options: the tokenistic way or the diverse way. Tokenism is the practice of making only a perfunctory or symbolic effort to be inclusive, which means that tokenism and discrimination are basically the same thing, except with tokenism, you pretend like that's not the case, which unfortunately currently has become the best way to go. It's less problematic than monotony or discrimination, but it is still cheaper, easier, and more comfortable than diversity. One of the most obvious examples of this tokenistic approach is when institutions use images that contain a variety of people from various different colors on their social media or whatever to promote their organization as diverse. Yet when you go to their actual organization or institution, there's not a single person of color walking around there or working there or anything. Now, this is a very obvious example of a very tokenistic approach to the demand for more diversity. But tokenism can also happen in a lot more subtle ways. It happens every time that we claim that we are welcoming of differences, yet we don't accommodate to the different needs. An example that I can think of is a while back when I needed to take staff photos, and I was informed that on the day itself, a makeup artist would come along with the photographer, and she would do our makeup to get us ready for the session with the photographer. And I just knew, I made a mental note that I needed to do my makeup at home before that. So the day came, I did my makeup, I come to work, and then there's some colleagues that are going before me, and then some that are scheduled after me. So then I get called to the makeup artist because I'm about to go in with the photographer, and I go and I sit there, and she's rambling through her stuff, and after a while she has to very shamefully admit to me, I don't have your shade. To which I replied, it's okay, I already did my own makeup. So she gave me some lip gloss and some mascara, and I was on my way. And I'm not gonna lie to you, even though I expected it, I was very disappointed, because she would never come out and straight up tell me I don't do Black people's makeup. But if I sit in your chair and you don't have a way to accommodate the needs of my skin complexion in order to give me the same service as my white colleagues, is the message not the same? So that's the thing with tokenism. I am just as excluded as with discrimination. It's just that it's more indirect. You take the back door instead. She's never gonna tell me I don't do Black people's makeup, but she's just not gonna be prepared to do it. Now, finally, diversity. Diversity is the practice of being inclusive of all the difference. For instance, by making sure that you have Black shades of foundation, powder, and concealer as a makeup artist. But also as an institution, by requiring makeup artists to meet the needs of your Black employees, of all of your employees. Now, here's the controversial part. In order to be truly diverse, we need special attention for marginalized minorities. Well, why is that? Well, if you're an organization set in the Netherlands, you will very likely not need to remind a makeup artist to bring white shades of foundation, concealer, and powder to satisfy the needs of your white employees. But you will very likely have to include that little reminder when it comes to your employees of color. How can we be more diverse? Well, short answer, you have to invest in it. There is no other way. It's like climate change. Just because a Swedish girl skipped school to remind us that we need to take better care of our planet, and some of us were like, yeah, we should totally do that, that doesn't automatically reverse the damage that we have done to our planet. We need to actively invest in changing our habits, our routines, and our way of living to prevent further damaging our planet, and we need to invest in science to find ways to reverse some of the damage or to find alternatives to the damage that has already been created. It won't come falling out of the sky, and it won't be solved because we acknowledge that there is a problem. We need to invest in it. In the same way, just because we acknowledge that there is exclusion and therefore a disparity of privilege, it doesn't magically solve it. We need to invest in changing our habits, routines, structures, policies, practices, etc. that will contribute to more inclusion. And this needs to be done as well as on an individual level, an institutional level, and a systemic level. So first, let's talk about how we can do this on an individual level. 1, as mentioned in our previous video, work on your biases and prejudices. Stop making assumptions and generalizations of people. 2, don't be lazy. Educate yourself about others. For instance, if you have friends of different nationalities, learn about their customs, their traditions, so you can always be mindful of them and maybe even celebrate it with them. 3, be honest with yourself about your privilege. Being blind to your privilege is being blind to the oppression of others. Being blind to the fact that your needs are always automatically met is being blind to the fact that others need to take extra steps to have theirs be met. 4, be an ally for diversity. For instance, by bringing diversity to the table. Bring topics that concern those that might not have a seat at the decision-making table. And even if they are, they shouldn't always have to carry the burden or the responsibility to bring up minority-related issues. Another thing that you can do is be a confidant. If a friend is trying to share experiences with discrimination and exclusion with you, listen and don't gaslight them. It happens very often that when someone points out or talks about their experiences of discrimination, a lot of people are very surprised and shocked that they didn't know of it before, and oftentimes because you're not paying attention. Another way that you can be an ally is see something, say something. Be a total snitch. Nah, okay, don't do that. If you're in a position of privilege, it is much more likely that something coming from you will be heard than coming from someone from a marginalized minority background. So for instance, if you're a man, you can say, listen, John, I don't think that it's fair that Lisa earns a lot less than I do when we do the exact same job. So take care of that, something like that. All right, so as an institution, how can you be more diverse? Invest, bro. Invest. 1, invest in changing and implementing policies. For instance, by making hiring policies transparent and specific to avoid individual biases from interfering. Another thing, hire professionals on the matter to consult your organization in making policies. 2, invest in trainings. For instance, mandatory and voluntary trainings can be crucial to ensure your employees know how to be inclusive. Always assume that any employee you have coming in doesn't know how to be inclusive. That is the best way to ensure that everybody knows what it's truly like to be inclusive, what is truly necessary to be inclusive. Another very important training to invest in is individual trainings for those in management positions. People in management positions always have some level of authority. I mean, it depends on the institution and what kind of management position they're in within the institution, but there is always going to be a power distance. So putting that level of authority in the wrong hands can lead to a lot of exclusion or tolerance thereof. 3, invest in a confidential HRM and counseling system outside of regular hierarchy. Having these systems be outside of the regular hierarchy can prevent things like what we just mentioned, like the power distance, from influencing your decision on coming forth with these instances. So 4, invest in research, especially if you're just starting on your journey towards more diversity. But in general, you need to invest in research. You need to invest in research that will uncover what the specific needs are within your organization. Every organization is different and your inclusion needs are also different. It isn't a one-fits-all solution when it comes to diversity and inclusion. You need to invest in research to understand what fits your organization. The needs of an organization in the Netherlands and an organization in the United States are completely different. While there is a lot of research out there, in regards to diversity and inclusion, especially nowadays, you need to invest in your own research in the same way that you would in matters regarding economics and your products and your services and your target group and any other practical thing that needs to happen within your organization. You invest in figuring out how that is plausible within your environment. So in conclusion, research. 5, last but not least, make your organization more inclusive first. People often make the mistake of waiting until they have all the variety to make their organization inclusive and diverse. But no, inclusion needs to come first. People want to work and take part in an organization they know will be mindful and respectful of their needs beforehand. An organization that they know will be inclusive first. So don't wait until you hire your first person in a wheelchair to make your building accessible to someone with a walking disability. Do it now. Don't wait until you hire your first Black person to implement policies on how to deal with racism in the workplace. Don't wait until you have your first incident of sexual harassment to come up with policies on how to deal with sexual harassment in the workplace. Do it now. All right, thank you so much for joining us today. We really hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned to our next video through our social media platforms, and don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe.